Hello, everybody. We talked about it last night. It did it. It did it. It's IDALIA. IDALIA. My neighbor's name is spelled the same way, but pronounced totally differently. And she's watching tonight. It's IDALIA, and we appreciate you joining us here tonight. It is a tropical storm now. Got a little bit stronger at 7 o'clock. The new advisory from 7 o'clock Central Time says we got a 995 millibar low pressure that is out there. And the winds, maximum sustained winds, are still at 45 miles per hour. It is about 100 miles away from Cozumel, Mexico. And so we're still watching that. And if you're plotting it, by the way, I still do, 20.1 to the north, 85.4 to the west. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight. We got a big lineup, big card going on here tonight. A lot of people that we're going to be talking to. Brett Adair is going to join us here very shortly. We got Drew with us as well, Drew Richards. My cat's back here studying something. But Chris Smith joins us right now in Panama City, Florida. He's chief met there at WJHG, where he has been for quite some time. Chris is a great friend of mine. He and I have known each other, I don't know how long. You haven't aged, and I look like you've been taking care of me for months. I look like I need you to come to my house and give me home care. But we've known each other a while.
6 years at least. Had to be when I was in Albany and you were in Birmingham.
Birmingham, yeah. And we went to a couple of very memorable trade shows together. I think you remember a couple of those that were very memorable for Weather Central and a few other companies there. Yeah, we'll talk about it later. That was Atlanta back in the day. And who was our guy then? We were trying to talk about it last night. Who brought us there?
Oh my gosh.
What's his name? It wasn't Kevin Northcutt, was it?
Was it Kevin?
I don't remember, but he was great. If you ever want to go and have a beer with a guy, that's the guy to do it with. We'll figure that out just a little bit later. But right now we got Chris Smith joining us. Chris, you're the expert down there into the Gulf Coast. I know you've been through many of these things, either from your time spent in Tallahassee in school at Florida State University, Gold Nose, or the time that you spent there working in Panama City. I know you were, Chris was actually at CNN for a while too, by the way, was filling in. He helped me to do that a time or two. So tell me a little bit about what you're expecting out of this. What are Floridians expecting out of this? And is there maybe a sense of less threat now over the past 24 hours because of the new forecast?
Less threat maybe for me in Panama City, but someone's going to get walled by this thing. And, there's so many eerie similarities, when you go through a hurricane like we did with Hurricane Michael. I can remember I had to work. I worked on Sunday. Normally I'm off on Sundays. I had to come in for work. I met my family for dinner and then came back into work. And then, of course, the hurricane was on Wednesday. And then tonight, same deal. I'm working tonight.
Wow.
Had dinner with the family. We chose a different restaurant this time because we figured the other one was bad luck. And then, we're looking at a Wednesday landfall. But, the trend that we've been seeing has been a little bit of an eastward shift. So as far as I'm concerned, that spares more of my viewing area, not necessarily like Apalachicola, Franklin County. They're obviously closer to where maybe the center goes. But, this thing hasn't started its northward turn yet. We just got the hurricane hunters out there today. So we'll start seeing that coming back with the computer models this evening. But I did notice that the GFS kind of like it did with Ian, is kind of course correcting, coming back to the euro, which if the euro ends up being right in this scenario, it hasn't budged at all.
Yeah. As far as location, and we did notice that at least the forecast had it coming, I guess, more toward the GFS because the millibars have changed considerably. I don't know if you've seen the 18Z in the euro, but it's, I don't know, 15 millibars lower at landfall. Drew, is that correct?
Yes.
From what it was earlier. Yeah, about 15 millibars lower. So it's kind of following everything else with how deep the low's supposed to be. Brett Adair, Brett, can you hear me? Can we hear you?
Yeah, David.
Brett, stop. I want to ask you, you heard him talk about what a bad day it was for him with Michael? And you're kind of the guy that, if there is such a thing as a bad day, Michael was it for you. Chris, are you familiar with Brett's day with Michael?
I don't
know if I am.
Oh, Chris. Oh, Chris, you'll have to Google that sometime when I was a part of it.
Yeah, I think
Give him the
the
short version.
Associated Press told the whole world I was dead, and
Oh, I did. Yes, yes.
Brett was the dead guy.
I was the dead guy, but I was the innovative dead guy that figured out, hey, when the car's going under, get out of the car. You know, unfortunately, there are parts of the Panhandle, especially from that area, Mexico Beach eastward, that are very susceptible.
Oh, right.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
Say that again.
Fort St. Joe when that happened, right?
I was right there at the Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe line area. A couple of the other correspondents on the national side were just to my west and lost a bunch of big dollar satellite trucks at that time when I got submerged. I was right there between Port St. Joe and Mexico Beach. Um, we left our vehicle and we actually took shelter. We had a bunch of people watching our live stream that day, and a homeowner reached out and said, you know, abandon the vehicle if you've got to. Here's where the keys to the house are. Go in the back door if you need to wash and dry clothes. The refrigerator's downstairs. However, they didn't realize that they just watched their refrigerator float by in front of the live stream because the surge had blown the bottom level of the home out. So yeah, Michael definitely stirs up some memories, and the area in where this one is, you know, developing currently, now that we're starting to see a lot of convection over the center, it really concerns me of the possibility of a rapid intensification.
Yeah, it was looking more. Go ahead.
Was hinting at that. The Hurricane Center was hinting at that starting this morning about the rapid intensification threat.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a couple of days too, that due to the way the Gulf of Mexico is and how warm the water temperatures have been, that's somewhat unprecedented. And I wondered if the models were going to pick that up at all, that, you know, at least that much latent. Well, you can see we're blowing the lid off this stuff at night. So the latent heat is certainly already playing a role here, especially at night when this is all happening here. And seeing these thunderstorms really, you know, every single night they've done it. We've had nocturnal blow-ups going on. So really didn't know if which model was going to, you know, really pick this up. It'll be interesting tomorrow and the next day, I guess, to find out which model now will have a bias toward for the rest of the season, I think, as we go about that. Brett, you had another question?
Well, there's a couple of things that are concerning to me about this particular case because as bad as Michael, I hate to throw that comparison up there, was in terms of landfall location. As the Hurricane Center currently has it projected, this area would be worse in terms of people that are going to try to go down and intercept this, because there's really not a safe place to do that. I know a bunch of people nationwide that are coming down in an attempt to document this storm, and they don't really know this area. That Big Bend region, Chris, and I'm sure you can give some more insight, is very very low, number one. Number two, you don't have many out routes, so escape plans are going to be few and far between. And number three, once you get out there, the storm surge, once it begins to come in, you're surged in, so you're there and you've got to ride it out from that point going forward.
Chris knows about this. Tell him.
Port St. Joe is a metropolis compared to a lot of the areas around the Nature Coast and the Big Bend area. And David and I were talking about that because I was like, I mean, I assumed you did, but like, I was like, I hope he knows that, like, this is not the place to be as far as, you know, getting in trouble, because there's no way out. It's very low.
Right.
If there's any saving grace, it's low population as far as the number of people. So at least if we're bringing a major hurricane. But the negative is, I mean, it is one of the most storm surge susceptible places in the world because of the shallow bathymetry. And then also, when you look at the Big Bend, it's a catcher's mitt. It's just going to absorb that water. And I remember when I was in school at FSU, that they talked about that if you ever got a Category 5 storm and it came in at the right angle, it could push water all the way to Tallahassee.
Yeah.
And see, I'm extremely concerned about that because my sister moved to Cross City about 3 years ago. So they're in that Cross City Chiefland area, which is just off Horseshoe Beach, not far from Cedar Key. And I've been down there and it's very flood prone, not even storm surge prone. The flooding starts and they have issues just from general thunderstorms with, roads in town flooding. So that coupled
Take my
with
iPod, Jarvis.
I heard a note earlier, Chris. I want to see if you've heard this that Ron DeSantis put out. Apparently, there's also an issue with fuel there where apparently diesel and regular unleaded fuel was mixed in human error, and that's been delivered to several fueling stations. So they've had to shut down a lot of fueling stations. That came out of Tampa, is where that freight was coming out of. So that's another caveat that could be possibly thrown into the mix here with I would hate to fill my vehicle up with unleaded thinking that's what it is and then be disabled due to it
Wow.
being diesel.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but I also I haven't read the press releases and stuff that came out from the governor yet. But yeah, if you go and say, go to a Google map and look down like where they're talking about Chiefland and Cross City, and then right in between those two is the Swanee River, the old song Swanee River. And but if you look there and you see Horseshoe Beach and everything, right in between those two is
nothing
the Swanee
down
River.
there.
We pulled it up for you.
Absolutely, Swanee River. Yeah, there's just nothing down there from the standpoint of you could just tell how low it is.
We pulled
So
it up
there's
for
a
you.
little spots, and you have like Swanee, there's places down there, Swanee, some businesses and homes, but you go around there, you have absolutely nothing. So you know that those areas are just if this thing ends up being a major hurricane, everybody like down there. So you know that those areas are just
Well, I think this bridge, from studying it today, I think this bridge to go across the Swanee is pretty far up. That's Sandy. Well, I think this bridge, that's a long way. And I think it's quite a few miles to go across the Swanee. So if you get on one side, and once you want to get out, that's a long way. And I think the river down there is like 85 miles to get out of there. This is a beach, by the way, for folks who don't know. This isn't the beach area. This is where you end up with cattails and gators down in here, just like we have down at St. Mark's. There's no sand down in here to be had. But to get to the other side, you got to go pretty far away in order to do that, to get over to Steinhatchee or somewhere like that, or Fish Creek. Those aren't metropolises either. You'd have to get on out to I-75 and get somewhere near Alachua or even Gaines. Oh, can I say go to Gainesville? I'll have to.
No, never.
You could go to Gainesville or Lake City. I'd rather you go to Lake City, but I'm kidding. You need to go anywhere that's safe, and that's your only outlet. And it is very concerning at this point that folks might not, necessarily know that, especially new people. And Brett's out there every storm. Brett's out there, so he sees some of the newbies who get out there who maybe don't know better. But
Well, this is the first chance, in my opinion, in many, many years. The last time I was there, David, and we were on air together, a little further to the west was Alligator Point. You're showing it right there in the center of the screen on Google Maps. That was for Hermine. Now, let's remember, Hermine was a strong tropical storm, weak Category 1 type hurricane that came in, and the center went a little to the east of us. So we were able to be there, but we had waves that were literally breaking onto the back of homes that were right there into Appalachia Bay. If you were to get a major hurricane to come up through there, that whole area is going to be underwater. Really, Alligator Point all the way down to Tampa, I believe, is still squarely in play for the potential for major impacts from the system.
which if
Brett, if you can, real quick, we had an audio issue. Looks like over YouTube, probably a YouTube issue. If you could repeat that fuel issue that you talked about down in Tampa, a lot of people were saying in chat they missed what that actual issue was. So if you can just repeat that real quick for everybody watching.
Yeah, just a quick bug. We heard earlier today that apparently due to some human error, that diesel fuel and regular gasoline was mixed in some manner and delivered to some stations that had been shut down across portions of Florida. Now, those fuel trucks apparently came out of the Tampa area. We're going to do more checking on that throughout the evening, but my thoughts on that were we should probably put the word out to folks because, more than likely there's going to be some evacuations that are attempted in some of these areas. So we're fueling up here in southern Georgia with gas cans and fueling the vehicle up before we even head down into Florida right now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
There we go. Chris
I
is
found-
showing the Citgo stations.
Yeah. These are all the stations. So I found the press release, and it's Lakeland, Cape Coral, Zephyr Springs, Fort Myers, but Tampa. So it looks like a little bit farther to the south. At least that's what what I'm seeing right now. But I can forward this to Dave if he wants to copy and paste it somewhere or whatever.
Let's while we still have you got a few more minutes with us, Chris? You got some time? Yeah. Okay, let's go through the model if we can. And now that the new Euro has come in, let's go to NHC first of all, if you can get that for us, Drew, the NHC forecast, and let's talk about this, the National Hurricane Center, which is where we first of all, sort of look to here and there. Right now, this is I think this is going to be 7 p.m. Central Time, unless it's changed. It was 7.
That's correct.
So 7 o'clock in initialization. Here's one of the things that's actually happened now is that the center is underneath the thunderstorms, and that's really a sign, if you will, maybe even a CDO beginning to form. Is that a little eye over there on the right-hand side? Is that where it actually is, a little clear area there that's trying to blow up? But again, this is what we were looking for during the day today, and each afternoon, evening, as it's gotten darker, we see the exchange of latent heat being made here, and the thunderstorms naturally blow up, but they're above or center of the low center as it is. So I think we do have some rapid strengthening. If you move forward now in time, we'll show you what NHC says. You follow the track that goes just to the west of the western tip of Cuba through the Straits, back up into the southern Gulf of Mexico, west of Key West, west of all of the southern part of Florida, west of Marco and Naples and Cape Coral. You're all fine there. It may be getting close enough at this point. What's that point right there? That's going to be for 7 p.m. on
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night?
That's Tuesday night. Yep, Tuesday night.
It's 7 p.m., so we're west now of Marco, and I don't know if we get any precipitation over there, but we'll start to get it. And you folks, now, if this track is real, Chris, is this the track you have? Because it bothers me that it's to the right of the window. You see it's to the right of the window?
Oh,
yeah. It doesn't follow the middle of the window, so... And some of that text is so small I can't read it, but...
Yeah, so that's... looks like 7 p.m. Wednesday there, and that's just southwest of Gainesville. Still is a Category 1 hurricane. Maximum sustained winds around 75.
Has it coming on shore? Is that further south than it was earlier? Further east? Zoom into that and see where that actually is, because I'm a little bit off on where I think I am. So that's east of Cedar Key.
Just east of Cedar Key. Yep, just east.
He wants to bring us the real graphics. Yeah, so as a Category 2. East of Cedar Key, but that would still be enough with that little feature there, Chris, the Cedar Key onto the east, where you still have a little bowl there. I'm sure that would be horrible because the first part of it would be a southern fetch.
That's right.
yeah, and
You're also going to be getting into Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
You're a perfect wind to pile up water in there with storm surge. And, we're still several days out. If this thing, keeps going a little bit to the right, this could end up kind of being the, a bigger one for Tampa. And then you're talking about, population center and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's my concern is, we dealt with thinking that Ian, might be a Punta Gorda issue down in Port Charlotte. And then last minute, even there the day of, it jogged to the right just a little bit. And, obviously Fort Myers Beach and Fort Myers took that on the chin. So that's something that we're going to have to be very mindful of. Even those spaghetti plots, now the Hurricane Center is a little right of the spaghetti plots, it looks like. So, going to be interesting.
All right, now this is the radar added with it here.
That's actually your wind gust from the GFS.
I'm sorry, wind
is what I'm
gust.
showing
I
for.
said
Yep,
radar.
wind gust.
Like you would expect, mostly on the right-hand side there. There's some 90. These are gusts or sustained?
These are gusts,
Gusts.
yes.
So, again, everything on the right-hand side, as you would expect. There's a clear cutoff to the west, as you'd also expect. And I know, Chris, you'd like to see, you don't want to see it for anybody, but this would certainly be much better for you there into Panama City to have a north wind than yeah. Chris, I saw something last night, and maybe I can show it to you later. I looked at the Destin camera last night, and it looked like they tried to cover the beach with like a big tarp. Like, you ever heard of that?
No.
I swear I got a picture of it. I'll show you later. It's weird.
Stuff.
I swear I thought they were trying to cover the beach there. It looked like watching a Braves rain delay, and they got caught up. Let's see. Here it is. Here's the picture from last night in Destin, Florida. See it on the right over there? Unless,
What is that?
I don't know. Unless the water got up and I don't know what that is. I've never seen the water get this.
No.
That's just vegetation there, and then like the color changes in the distance from light.
You think so? It's not like that tonight.
Yeah, I see the vegetation fine. It looks like foam or something over there, though. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, and did the surf come? I've never seen the surf come that high. This is at the Whale's Tail, which I've had a place across the street there since I was at FSU for many years. You're gonna look it up and see if it's still there. I've never seen this on that camera. It has to rotate around, but I thought if I've never seen the water go up that far, so I don't think it's water related. I thought, did they just try to cover up the tarp? And I think that's a property border right there too, which made me think that. We had a bear. I was down there during the summer, and we had a bear come up on the beach, Chris.
Well, that will happen.
That came up like a half a mile from me. I was on the beach, and people started running. And it was the bear that came up, and then I don't know how many sharks we've had this year down there.
Alligators.
Every now and then. Man, it's Mutual of Omaha around here.
Yes, it truly
But
is.
I mean, compared to the Nature Coast over there, that's a whole different ball game over there. But hopefully, Brett, talk to those kids that are out there, because you could end up in real trouble real fast.
Yeah, the thing is just brutally honest. You can tell most of these guys anything now, and they just think you're trying to detour them away from getting the best content, and that's not what it is. There's literally nothing there, except there are a few nice Airbnbs that have built up, and they're on some concrete pilings. But as we saw, if you get a 20-foot type storm surge, and I know we're only forecasting 11 to 12-ish right now, but if you were to get a storm surge from a Category 4 plus type storm, which would be upwards of 20 foot in that area, it's going to obliterate most things. You're not going to have anything left standing for many, many miles.
Drew, what model is this?
That's the 48-hour HER from earlier today. So that's the 18Z HER. Of course, it only goes out, until about Tuesday midday. That's 1 p.m. when the loop cuts off there at the very end. So just, curious, looking at the different midday model runs.
There's an eye right there. Yeah.
Yep, things shifted to the right. Now the HER seems to be a little bit left of the initial NHC, the official track. So it'll be interesting to see how our 0Z model runs come in, and I believe they will have a little bit more of that upper air data that they will be ingesting from the flights from the National Hurricane Center earlier today. So hopefully they'll be a little bit better.
We have recon flights that will be going out here shortly as well. I was just looking at their flight plans, so it won't be long. We'll have more planes headed that way.
Brett's also looking at the dry at midnight tonight. Brett's also looking at the dry air on the east side in that banding too. He likes that.
I honestly, again, I've had this argument today, and I understand where the Hurricane Center is on this issue. Our models with this type of a environment, they struggle, especially with intensity. You know, our global models were just like the Euro was running inland a a Cat 2 ish. Well, now the 18Z wants to bump that thing up to almost possibly Cat 4 type pressures. Literally, if you're watching us at home, prepare for a hurricane, number one. The possibility of a major hurricane is very real, and the possibility of a high end hurricane is there. We're talking about bathwater. And if we can get this storm north into the Gulf over this bathwater long enough before it gets impacted by very much shear, I don't see how it doesn't just tap into that and go off to the races as we go through the next 24 hours or so.
Chris, anything else that you look at this storm and you think I've seen this before or I've not seen it at all? But I was telling Brett early in the day today, we used to go through two scenarios. One was what happened if a Category 4 or 5 were to go just to the west of New Orleans. And then, after school, that happened. And the other thing that we talked about, even back into the 80s when I was in school, was, what would happen if we had a landfalling big hurricane somewhere between Apalachicola, Dog Island, Carabel, something like that, and what would happen. Because I've actually been fishing out there at St. Mark's when high tide came up and the water would come up to the lighthouse there, so the lighthouse would be the only thing that was, I don't know that scenario. We used to have a lot of oceanography students, in class with me, who would say the same thing. Is it going to make it all the way up here to Tallahassee?
Well, you got Dog
Island out there too,
right?
And there's no way out to Dog Island other than by airplane or boat.
Yeah.
Dog Island, for people who don't know, is the one like St. George Island. Then there's a little bit of a break. Then it's Dog Island, and it's kind of south of like Carabel.
Yeah. Charles Kuralt said that was one of his favorite places in the world. Dog Island. Well, all right, buddy. I know you got to prepare for your show. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us, Chris. And I really.
Good to see you.
And thanks for letting me tag in here for a few minutes. We're going to get ready for the news tonight. But if y'all ever need anything, let me know. Hopefully, I hate it for the people over there, but as this thing goes a little bit east, my area can breathe a little bit easier. But especially in Apalachicola, we're going to keep a close eye on it.
Yeah, good deal. Chris Smith, Chief Meteorologist, WJHG Television. He's going to be on the air tonight. Chris, you'll be on in what, 30 minutes?
Hour and a half. Although I'm probably have to do something on Facebook here in a little bit.
Yeah. Chris, thank you so much, mate. It's good to see you. He looks terrific. Chris Smith is joining us. Let's go back to the maps here and talk a little bit about what's happening with some of our modeling here as well. And this is what, Drew? What are we looking at?
Total rainfall. We're looking at total precip from the GFS.
That's kind of a small width on that rainfall. Not too far away to the left or right. Is it much different? But there's a.
You're right. 2 to 4 inch, pretty common, and then just in that little bitty area. We can actually measure that here in just a second. I would say, no more than 50 miles wide on this model run. Of course, it may change. Yeah, 5+ inches of rain in that little strip just east of Tallahassee. And, of course, that's right along where it thinks the center is going to move.
Hold on.
That's going to be, again, which model is this that we're looking at right here?
That's GFS.
The GFS?
Mm-hmm.
Where's our endpoint? Go to the radar in the GFS and see what our radar looks like. And this is going to be from 18Z. This is not the latest. We won't have any of that stuff till much later on tonight. The NAM might be coming in. Well, the NAM 12K might be coming in here pretty soon. But
hey, David, do we have Brandon? Are we working with Brandon in terms of the production and the back end tonight?
Yes.
Brandon, if you could in our show elements group, pull that video from Michael. I kind of want to give the viewers a view of what it's like to be right on the coastline and in the teeth of a high-end hurricane, just in case, because that image right there, that is a stout looking hurricane.
From YouTube, or where do you want to pull it from?
Yeah, it's in the It's in the show element area there. It's the Dropbox link of some of the Michael
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah, I'll let him pull that. I'm gonna get, guys. We talked about him earlier. I'm gonna get
Yeah.
Jim Edds linked up here and get him in the our video here.
Yeah.
And
Dave, while
have a
we're working on
discussion.
that, if you can work on your iPad just for later at some point, we've had some questions wanting to see the storm surge information from the NHC.
Yep.
If you can pull that up, I know it's a little bit easier, I think, for you than it is
Yeah.
me on the software. So we'll get that loaded up to show here in the show just a little bit. But it's a couple of questions on the official storm surge amounts from the NHC.
Yeah, I have it pulled up right now. But
Perfect.
What do you want to do first, Jarvis? We'll show you the storm surge here, and this is what NHC says. Again, a north wind would prohibit a surge for places west of where the low is actually coming on shore. So if the low does indeed end up on the eastern side of the Appalachian Bay, your storm surge is going to be much less. I think there'll be some because of the way that the whole thing is shaped. That Appalachian Bay area is shaped, especially up in here. You can see, as Chris was talking about, it makes a cup. It makes a glove, it makes a cup right there. So the water's going to pile up, and it's going to take it much longer to go left or right, east or west, because the water will just keep coming on in. And especially if you get a fetch that comes in south to north here for a long period of time, that's what we always feared living in Tallahassee. I lived in Tallahassee for 4 years. We had several hurricanes, but none of them really came in with that trajectory. So that's our concern. From the Ocklackney River, actually, which would be Carabel, down to Indian Pass, which would be Apalachicola, that is a 2 to 4 foot surge that is possible right there. They've drawn roughly from the Carabel Bridge over to the Osceola River, which is on the eastern side of Leon County, or Gadsden County, excuse me, but that's going to be where the St. Marks River comes in. And the lighthouse there at St. Marks being a wildlife management area there. And then you get into tons of wildlife management areas, WMOs, that are in the rest of this region right here. But you get down to Steinhatchee and back down as far south as Chassahowitzky, I think is what they're saying there, 5 to 8 on the Anklet River. But this right here is our main concern, where you see the red. That's a 7 to 11 foot surge, and I'm not really sure 11 feet how far inland it goes, but I think it goes a long way inland. 11 feet does. Be interesting to see when Brett gets down there a little bit closer. It'll be interesting to see what he finds out about elevation, because that's going to be key. I probably have some maps we could dig up here very shortly, but just to show you some of the stuff, I'll let Brett talk over this. This is Mexico Beach during Hurricane Michael, and some of that video that Brett was shooting out of the front of his vehicle. And Brett, just tell us about it.
Well, that elevation there is definitely not good, number one. But this is what you see in these type of major hurricanes. Not much until you get close to something like power lines that are popping. This is in the right front eye wall of Hurricane Michael. This is, I believe this is Highway 90 east side of Mexico Beach, moving into Mexico Beach out of Port St. Joe. You can see all kind of debris flying, and right now you probably don't know it. There's several condos there on the left side of the road, and that wind starts blowing onshore. You can see all the roofs coming off and blowing across the road there. The Gulf of Mexico is literally right there to the left, and then we try to go up Bunker Hill here, and you can see poles and everything. I mean, the winds in these major storms, they're going to knock stuff down. It's going to block your way. It's going to cause you problems. Get trapped. So these are the type of things that we dealt with in Mexico Beach. And this area where this storm's coming in is likely to be even more secluded, lower lying, and with fewer escape routes. You can see the storm surge there beginning to come in by those condos, and then it's over with. It doesn't take long, and you got whiteout conditions, rising waters, and water's coming up quick. So again, if you're planning on documenting one of these storms, keep in mind these coastal areas with very few in the way of population, very, very few structures. No parking garages. I'm going to repeat that twice. No parking garages. You see a refrigerator floating down the road there. Um, there's no elevation. When you get down there, if you're on the immediate coast, Steinhatchee, Cedar Key, those areas are just not very safe at all. A 7 to 11 foot, and you're completely inundated in both of those places.
With the exit routes being, very few. We'll be looking at those as we move along in time. But your exit is so important. Again, this is Brett. This is about. I was crying about right here on the newscast at Weather Nation because Brett and I were speaking. We were together on FaceTime.
This is about the time that we exited the truck and the truck begins to float, and we just left all the video running at that point inside the truck. It made no sense to try to get it out because, we didn't know if you had seconds or minutes before you were going to get completely inundated with water or hit by a 2x4 that's flying through the air. So the focus was to get out and seek shelter, which we did. We were rather calm about it. Again, I'd been doing this for almost 20 years at this point, and this goes to show that you can get in a bad situation. Don't ever think you can always outsmart Mother Nature. And I don't particularly wish to get in this type of a situation again, but yeah.
Well, the other, so the other thing was, I can say this with confidence. So Brett and I are talking to each other. I had gone 10 minutes or so without knowing where he was. Looked at I just happened to look at a monitor and I saw this feed and I thought, oh my God, he just did a live shot for us not that long ago, and there was some wind, but it wasn't this. It wasn't a typhoon tip. Typhoon tip was the biggest one I remember as a kid. But anyway, and I saw this, and so I called Brett, and Brett was calm, but I was not. And I was livid about, oh my God, where has he gotten to where this is so horrible? And I remember, this is true, Brett, you may not remember it, but when you pulled up to that house, you were like, I'm here at a house, but what am I going to do? And I said, break in, because you didn't really feel like breaking in because that's not something you do normally. So you had a little argument with me. I said, I'll pay for the door, break it down. Do you remember that?
Well, I do. And then what was crazy is I had another message come in from someone who was watching the live feed. We were sitting in their driveway right there. That was their house.
Yeah.
And they told us, I got a little more confidence when they said, hey, kick the door in, whatever. It doesn't matter. Here's where stuff's at. Here's my name. It's crazy what's going on, but just, keep me updated if you can. So we were making sure that we were, giving them all the info that we could, along with trying not to, become the story. That was the biggest thing. We didn't want to become the story.
Didn't want to become the story. I remember you saying that too, and we didn't. The minute I saw this was happening, I came off the air. We didn't go with your video anymore. I came off the air and just tried to talk to you. And this is you and I have been in some squirrely stuff before. Even was it last year or the year before? We were in a squirrely situation down south.
Yeah, we were in a little bit of a situation there in Laplace with Ida. Not quite this, but it was nasty.
It was this strong. We just weren't stuck in this particular road. But we saw stuff flying like this.
Yes.
So we have been, but we even learned from, from that situation. I was always looking down the stream when we were in that storm down in Louisiana at what could lift up. There was a situation where we had a pole. There was an awning. Can I say where? It was at Home Depot. We were near the awning at Home Depot, and what the wind? What did the wind officially get up there, Brett? It was
I want to say that they had a gust. Laplace had one of the highest gusts of the whole
Yeah.
storm. It was in the 150 range.
Yeah, it was somewhere around there. And the awning, so we made sure that we knew which direction the wind was coming from. But I was kind of worried about the awning, and I kept watching it, and I had said something. I said, Brett, I don't feel good about that awning because look at those big 4-inch, 5-inch poles that are sitting there. And so we moved. And we moved around another area there where we had water pounding off the roof of the building, but we were close to the building. I said, if this whole building can go, then we deserve it. But
Right.
we had water coming in that was unbelievable from the roof. And it was 10 minutes later, maybe that thing broke, that pole broke, and Brett saw it go by, that big pole, and it was right where we were.
It did, and most people don't understand. We were in Laplace, which is a bit inland for Ida, but the problem is we were on the west bank of Pontchartrain, and we had an onshore flow, so there was like 10 to 12 feet of water that came off Pontchartrain, and we started seeing it come at us from the east. So we retreated literally into the Home Depot parking lot. We're listening to the scanner where people are in their attics trying to get away from water and water rescues. So crazy, crazy stuff. So we've been through these type of things, but again, Mexico Beach was a little bit more populated, had more structures. Laplace was most definitely more inland, more populated, more places to kind of, hide versus get inundated. This Big Bend area, it's a national refuge. It's an animal refuge. It's trees. It's a couple of houses out there on Horseshoe Beach in Cedar Key. It's not the same. This is the worst area from a documentation standpoint of a person being there that you can be for a major storm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Is our buddy going to
Jarvis,
join us?
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Jarvis, I don't know. Do we have
Yes,
any
we do.
setting on here that doesn't allow us to have but so many people? Because he sent me a message and said that it says the stream ID is in use and try a different link.
Jarvis, did you give him this? No, I've seen 32 people on this thing before.
All right, well, I know. I talked to Mr. Dean just a few minutes ago. I think he's in now too, but I know he had trouble initially as well.
Oh, really? Did you give him the password?
I did. I am waiting on.
Maybe it'll come up here shortly because it took Chris a couple times.
We're waiting on Jim Edds, guys. In case you're unfamiliar, I'm gonna kind of bring him in and introduce him. Jim is one of the world-renowned hurricane chasers. Jim goes to Guam. Jim goes to the Philippines. Jim has chased some of the biggest storms on the planet, not just the United States. Jim's been all over the world on tropical cyclones. So I figured he would be, and he's down there. If I'm not mistaken, he has a place in Tarpon Springs, and that's where he lives. So he was going to move up towards Cedar Key tomorrow and get into place. Let's see. He's still having the same issue. Let's see. Okay. Where did you send that, Brand? Okay, hold on. Well, I think
8:45. See what the NAM has. I hate the NAM for hurricane stuff, but we've probably got the 12Z in. I mean the 12K in, don't we?
Yeah, I can load up the old.
Try that and see what it's like.
NAM loves to take everything down into the 890 millibar range, as you guys know.
But so. I'm really interested in seeing the track, though.
Yes, I looked at it earlier, and it was pretty much. I think the 6Z last night midnight run. I think it was pretty much in line with the GFS then. But yeah, we'll definitely pull up the later runs and see what it's showing.
It should be in line, I would think, by now, but.
I think I got it figured out. I think Brandon sent me the right one this time. Paste.
Say that again, Brandon. Sure thing. Yeah, definitely,
Think we
guys.
need-
I've been reading your chat, so if you could keep your questions coming. I know ATL Florida Girl had one about the surge maps. Of course, David showed that. So if y'all have any other questions, feel free to put those in chat because I've been watching since the beginning of the show, and we will get to your question and take your question and answer it with anybody here. If you have some specific question for Dave or Brett or Jim or anybody here, just let us know there in chats because you guys are being awesome tonight. A lot of cool stories that I've been reading. Ray was 1 block from shore, rode it out, and Michael, he said, so very cool. Glad you guys were okay. I know I can't imagine, going through, I went through outskirts of Ian last year, wasn't in the middle of it, but was up in Tampa. And, even there, just the roar of the wind for hours on end is just absolutely incredible. And then when you've got the wind plus the surge, yeah, it's definitely something that you'll remember for the rest of your life. So keep those stories coming and keep your questions coming in chat, and we will definitely get to those.
All right, let's move the dam up a little bit here and see what we got. There's what it looks like. This is going to be the radar data on top of that. And again, a movement that goes just to the west. This is pretty much just what the GFS has, just to the west of Cuba, going through the straits there, if you will. And then back up into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. It looks like it has a trail that's going to end up somewhere a little bit south of NHC, but within 40, 50 miles, it looks like, of the same track. All the spaghetti plots that we have seen have been so close together at the same time, which indicates that at least as far as where this thing is going, there's high confidence sort of in this area. And that is going to be to the west, though, didn't it? Is that a
little bit to the west?
center?
Yeah, that is 7 a.m. Wednesday. It looks like center coming on shore.
That's the furthest west I've seen anything at this point. And did it have a little eye right there coming on shore somewhere around Apalachicola? And that would be horrible. I mean,
that's about the worst case scenario that we
that
talked about.
scenario right there would be really, really bad because that is going to be a south wind that would be coming into that cup area that we were talking about, moving in toward Appalachia Bay, which I don't even think we've mentioned yet. The reason why that is such a detrimental situation is that Appalachia Bay is shallow. It is super shallow there. Years and years of that sort of a southerly fetch coming in and being trapped. The sand is trapped there. And you can go way out from east of Apalachicola or south of Tallahassee. You can be beyond side of land and still be in about 30 feet of water if you want to. It is a super shallow bay, so that means the volume that the water can fill is less and less. So you're bringing it from water that could be 200 feet deep just off of Tampa and bringing that load of water into a shallow scenario, which means the volume of water is much greater than the allowable volume that you have from the sand to the top. So where does it go? It has to go further inland. And so if that is the case, that would be a huge bummer to all of that area, all those islands that we were talking about out there. That's 120 mile per hour gusts.
Yeah, that's the 3 kilometer NAM, and that's as far out as it goes. So that's valid at 1 a.m. Wednesday morning.
Yeah, it went down to 910 millibars on the latest runs.
On the 3?
Like I said,
yeah.
3K.
Well,
you have to take that. You guys that are watching, you're true. You guys that are looking at the models on the internet, always take the NAM kind of with a grain of salt with tropical. But
don't say that.
What's the old saying?
Don't say that. That's not what
we're
saying. Don't take it with a grain of salt. You might take the speed, the wind speed,
intensity. Sorry, yes.
But normally this far out, I mean, if it's within 60 hours, which the 3K is, the end of it is 60 hours. If it's within that, then as far as positioning goes, it normally isn't too far off. This is as far off as I can remember at this point. So that's it still bothers me that the NHC line is out of the swath. We're loading up the full loop, so guys, bear with that just a second while it's flashing because it's loading up the wind data. This is the wind gust that we're looking at here.
I think we got Jim on now too. I think he is finally made it.
Let him get him up.
All right, Brandon's going to work on getting you here on, and we'll start the combo.
Brett, introduce him.
I will definitely do that.
I'm not sure we've passed paths before, but I know Chris Smith said he knew Jim pretty well.
All right, go for it. All right, guys, we've got a treat for you this evening. My buddy Jim Edds down in Florida, he operates extremestorms.com. He's Extreme Storms on Twitter. You can find him basically everywhere that there's a tropical cyclone that is looking to make landfall, except we can't be in Bermuda and Florida at the same time like we've been talking about. But how you doing tonight, Jim?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I almost went to Bermuda. I thought I'd get close, but then this popped up, and I said, "Well, I live just north of Tampa, so I wanted to stay a little closer to home, and we're right on the water, so surge is a big thing."
Yeah, with this system, I know that you're watching really close there in terms of the surge potential because, we know what these storms can do, especially if they jog a little to the right. We both remember Ian pretty well. Instead of Port Charlotte, it went to Fort Myers area, and with a major surge at least. And this one's definitely, I'm sure, pretty close, a little too close for comfort there for the home front at least.
Yeah, I was looking at the storm surge map, and it said 3 to 5, and then 5 to 7 were right on the border there at Anclote River. So, yeah, it makes a big difference because I think the garage will go under at about 6 feet. It's a condo, and they have all the cars in the garage, and so it means I may have to relocate the cars or do something.
Right. And in terms of storms, a lot of you guys, and David, you may have seen this. Jim's got one of the most crazy photos that I've ever seen. He was out in the eastern Bahamas, out in Marsh Harbor during Dorian, when it was basically sitting there forever.
Yeah.
And he's got the stadium effect picture, a selfie with a stadium effect during the day there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was Jim. Jim's been around the block with these things a time or 10.
Jim, this is kind of a weird question, but did I see that you're from Wiesbaden? You were born.
I was born there in Wiesbaden. My dad was Air Force, and he flew C-130s. Still flying that plane.
Yeah.
And so they had a reconnaissance, spying reconnaissance. Wing there, and he was a navigator on one of those planes.
I was in Frankfurt with my dad, who was in the Army.
Yeah.
For several years till I was 5. But I remember I had photographs of myself on the Rhine, not far from Wiesbaden on the river there. I don't know why we used to go over there for a hot dog or something. I don't really remember, but anyway, to get off on that, it was wild. I just saw that I saw Wiesbaden, and I have fond memories of that when I was just a little child, and you guys weren't born yet. All of y'all on the left weren't born yet. I guess one of my questions for you is, if I can have just a moment here, is this sort of a storm. Have you ever been in this area for another storm? Were you around for Michael, or have you been in the Panhandle a lot for storms?
Yeah, I think my first storm up there was 75 Eloise, and then came Frederick. A few typhoons in Guam before that, but they didn't get too close. They kicked up the waves, and it was cloudy for a while. But I think the first big one was 98 George in Key West with Jim Leonard. But the water does pile up there. I was up there for Ivan. I wasn't on Pensacola Beach like Mike Tice was, but I got to see water. What it does, it just goes all the way across the Barrier Island, like Fort Myers. So
Right.
it's a big concern on when you have sandy beaches, the water just goes across, and so it's a different mindset. You have to really plan for that, or you can get in big trouble.
Did you remember in '85 Hurricane Kate, Elena?
Right, Elena, Kate, Juan. That was probably the best storm chase season. I wasn't chasing them, but
Yeah.
it
I
just seemed
was.
like it just went on and on and on.
Yeah, that was my year. I was at Florida State University, and Hurricane Kate and Elena came through there to where we were affected by both of those, but we had a chasing team at that point. some of them are watching tonight, and so to call them a team is really. We had a Volkswagen that had no seats in it, so we ended up having bean bags. But we went around the area there and down to the lighthouse, the St. Mark's lighthouse. We sat there for Hurricane Kate and Elena in Dog Island. I got some video from Carabel from the bridge there, which I think Brett's very familiar with. I looked up one time, and there was about 5 people there who worked with me at Weather Nation who were there at the bridge at Carabel, but they were at the restaurant, actually, Jim. So,
Right. Well, you didn't have to go far because it's
yeah,
it's a late November storm, which was unheard of back in 1985.
Yeah, we had tornadoes. I was at school at Florida State, and we had tornadoes there too. I lost my power. I lived next to the governor's house, actually, or I never got power back, but we got it back within about 4 or 5 days. But we went almost 2 weeks without power there in Tallahassee because of all the tornadoes that we had. We had many of them that were underneath the radar that were, never seen. So, but that was back into the 80s again, and I don't know. Has anybody else got? I appreciate it. It's great talking to you because I do know your name and I've seen a lot of your work, and I appreciate everything that you do because those things always help us to learn something new. I learn something new out of every situation.
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions coming in from chat, actually, and I think Jim would be awesome to take some of these questions if you want. One question just a few minutes ago when we got Jim on, what's the difference? G wanted to know in chat, what's the difference between a king tide and a regular high tide? Any of you guys want to take that?
Brett's familiar with that.
Well, basically, with the king tide, we're looking at I think, Jim, is it a lunar high tide that's coming with this event? I think they're kind of lining up with a supermoon this week.
I have to check. I know the moon is. I'll have to check what the moon is, but the tide this afternoon, we noticed it was unusually high
Yes.
where we live. So I was wondering.
G says there's a full blue moon coming, and people are afraid of king tides flooding the crops. What are king tides, and are they different from the regular high tides? Yeah, evidently the full blue moon is right around the corner.
Which is the second moon of a month, is the blue moon.
Correct.
Yeah, that could be real trouble if this hits anywhere near that high tide, because you're going to add the storm surge plus the tide, and that can make a big difference on what floods and what doesn't.
Yep.
Those king tide cycles also come with about a foot to a foot and a half difference. They actually are larger than a high tide, and it's got something to do with the moon phase, though, specifically. So those king tides are problems. But this is, I think, the blue moon, as you mentioned, David. It's going to be the astronomical high tide that we're going to be dealing with, potentially very close to the landfall of this system.
Yeah.
Awful. Also, Godzilla in chat. Glad to have Godzilla with us tonight. Asking, what is the official surge forecast for Cedar Key? I know, David, you showed that just a little bit ago, but maybe we'll get that pulled back up here in a second. So, surge forecast for Cedar Key is in there. And then kind of on the same type of questions, ATL Florida Girl asking, what storm model was the most accurate, if any of you guys remember, last year or a couple years ago with Hurricane Michael? So do any of you guys know which one nailed Michael, or if any of them did when that was coming in the northern Gulf Coast? And also ask, are we using that same model for this storm?
From my experience, a lot of the models did pretty well during Michael in terms of track. I think they bent a little toward the right as we approached landfall, ended up being a little bit east of Panama City, but they had that Destin to Apalachicola corridor pegged pretty hard for most of the time frame. Now, intensity models are going to vary, period. The biggest thing that I've been waiting on with this system is what's happening right now. If you look at infrared satellite, we finally have a CDO, or a central dense overcast, that is over the center. The next thing we're going to be looking for is that sinking in the center so that we actually see an eye peek out. And when that happens, we'll know that we're definitely getting into that more intense phase of the system. And as you can see there, it shows the center of circulation is pretty much underneath that very, very deep convection there, east of Playa del Carmen and south of Cuba. So we're getting to the point where we're going to be watching very, very carefully to see if this system goes under rapid intensification, maybe even tonight. and that'll play a massive role in intensification forecast number one. And I think Jim can back me up a little bit on this. In years past, when we've seen systems bomb out and get extremely deep, Ian was one last year that, as it was intensifying the entire way prior to landfall, it ended up pulling and jogging a little bit toward the land friction or to the right as it got closer to the Florida shore, which saved some areas. South of Tampa, due to the offshore flow, much of Tampa Bay was sucked dry from that storm as all the water got pushed into Fort Myers Beach. So I'm really skeptical, and I think the Hurricane Center is erring on the side of caution until they really see this storm get deeper. In being a more stout system, I really believe that we could have the cusp of a major hurricane by this time tomorrow night, even if we continue to see the deepening.
Yeah, I think so. The last pressure was 995 and 50 miles an hour, so it doesn't have far to go, 25 miles an hour, and it's a hurricane. I think there's a good chance we could wake up to a hurricane in the storm. Now, about 1:30 a.m. Eastern time, there'd be another Air Force Recon, a C-130 in there, and they'll be flying and the rest, for 8 or 9 hours. So we'll wake up and we'll have some good data. So if it's a hurricane, we'll definitely know about it. But for me, you were asking or talking about the tracks of Michael. Michael was frustrating because there was one place I dare not go, and that was Mexico Beach, because that was a high spot, and I know people that went there, but having been around storm surge, it's just a little small town, but that track would go right and go left, and you're running, and then you have to relocate at 3 a.m. after you have a good spot, and I finally said, okay, I'm going to be on the weak side, and just left it at that. But I guess it doesn't matter for the people that they're in the path. If it's coming, it's going to be bad weather, but if you're on the left side, you don't get the storm surge. That's what I found out. So that, because I didn't want to get that, but I guess the models aren't good enough for storm chasers. And even the track will bounce around, and the hurricanes wobble. They wobble 20 miles left, 20 miles right. So it's difficult to get right where you want to. So that's Jim, the challenge.
With your experience, if you were a new storm chaser or videographer, documentarian with plans to come down for this system, based currently on where it looks to head, given that you've been from this area, you know this area very well, what advice would you give for somebody who thinks that they're going to go into this area and, be able to get in on the coastline and document this storm and do so safely?
Yeah, it's going to be really tricky if it stays on this track, because there's not a big city down there. There's no parking garages. It's very low. You got to go inland, and then you've got to move north and south from there. And going inland, it may be shallow for or low elevation for a good ways. But if you haven't done this before and done this in Florida, I recommend you don't, because you're probably going to lose your ride. It's probably going to, you're going to learn the hard way. The best way is to go with someone that knows the terrain, knows the territory, and then you won't have to learn the hard way. So, but it can be really tricky in these flat coastal areas. Your escape route can go underwater. If you want to do this, it's not for everybody. It's for a few people, I think, they're really good at it. They go get good footage, and that footage shows people this is why you want to get out, because of the storm surge is serious stuff. When that water comes up, you may not be able to get out, and then you got to deal with that. A flooded car minimum, and it's no fun losing a car to storm surge.
Well, you have more rivers over in that area, especially with the Suwannee River. So as you mentioned, your access in and out could get blocked really quickly by water, because water is also going to push into any of these interior areas, creeks, rivers, streams. They're all going to back up as long as there's an onshore flow. So you got water coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, and those creeks and rivers have the exact same thing, which is going to cause them to rise, not to mention the heavy rainfall in the area. It's already low lying enough. I mean, and not in, in the infamous words of David Neal, it won't last long, but it'll last long enough.
Right. There are a lot of different ways a hurricane can bite you. The wind, the storm surge, and you can have the runoff that you just talked about, and you don't want to go through water that's 6 inches or more, because it can sweep your car away, and it's increasing, and you just don't know these things. So, these days I'm a little more conservative than some of the younger guys, because I've seen what can happen, and I don't like what could happen. I've seen Charlie when it was blowing 150. I've seen Dorian when the water was coming up, and Haiyan in the Philippines. I've seen that crazy wind and the things that can go wrong. So you become a little more conservative, and try to pass on little tidbits to the younger guys coming up the ranks. But there's a lot of ways you can get in trouble, and so you need to think about all these things that could go wrong, and you have to mitigate these risks. Like flying a plane, you got to mitigate the risk. So that's something that I'm always thinking about, and I hope everybody else is too.
I've got one more for you, and then I'll defer to everybody else. And you and I talked about this a little while ago. It's been a very long time since a potential strong to major hurricane has impacted either the Big Bend area down to Tampa directly. Do you believe this area, number one, we know the shallow shelf that comes all the way in from Tampa Bay north. If we were to get a category 4 or 5 storm hypothetically going into this area, do you believe that we would see some unprecedented type storm surge, heights that would come in along with the storm tide?
Yeah, I think it would. To me, that's the next big disaster in the U.S. 102 years ago, they had a Tarpon Springs hurricane. So it hit Tarpon Springs, which is just a little bit north of Tampa, but the winds wrapped around after the eye came in and pushed all the water up Tampa Bay. There's so much that can flood here. And when I talk to people, even in the condo, they say, well, we're protected. It's been so long. I said, you're not protected. If you look at all the tracks for 120 years, if you plot all those out, everybody got one. From Texas all the way up to the Carolinas, everybody got a storm. And if you haven't gotten one in a long time, you're going to see one sooner rather than later. But they just don't understand in Tampa because they haven't been hit. Nobody here was alive 102 years ago, except maybe a few people. So they have this mentality. I think my experience has been that it happens to Fort Myers, or it happens to Pensacola, or Miami. It won't happen to us. And I just wish there wasn't that we're invulnerable, we're invincible. This is not going to happen here, but it will, and it's going to push a whole lot of water up. And here it's this old construction. They haven't been hit, so the building codes, a lot of stuff was grandfathered in, and it's going to be like Punta Gorda during Charlie times 10. And that's the thing I worry about.
That's
so.
Those are great points, actually. And like you said, a lot of those places are still grandfathered in, so they didn't do any upgrading. They didn't do any, we don't really know how strong they are. And the other thing, Jim, I've been, this is 44 years I've been doing this. I don't know what's going to happen with this really super warm Gulf of Mexico like we have. I don't know if the models are picking it up. I really don't understand all that at this point. I should probably call some people who do, but But I think this could be a little bit unprecedented, and maybe the models are, some of them are hitting super low. We were just talking about that. The euro was right there at the upper levels throughout most of the day yesterday and today. It was way on the higher end, but it looks like now it's beginning to go back toward the GFS and everything else with a much lower millibar before coming on shore. And I don't know if that's as a result of whether or not they're looking at these water temperatures that are into the 90s, in some cases the mid 90s, and to depth. I mean, some of these areas here, I know that the water temperature to depth to 100 feet may be into the 80s. So what I do know about hurricanes is that, you do need about 100 feet in depth of stable water, but unless there's been upwelling, and there hasn't been any. This is a track that hasn't been hit just yet. So the water is what it is, and it's hot. And so I don't know personally what happens with this whole scenario because of that. About the only thing I can give you is to the people who are watching us here, me personally, is the track. And I think the spaghetti plots are kind of all over the track. There's not really a western outlier that looks ridiculous. There's the Apalachicola outlier. I don't know what model that is. Well, it might be the NAM, I guess. In all of that, it might be the NAM.
Yeah.
The western outlier.
If you look at one thing that I did notice this evening, guys, and it's probably the reason the NHC and all the models try to bend that right in the track, and it's also a very big concern as the turn starts to take place. We've always talked about interactions with troughing and venting the storm, potentially causing it to strengthen synoptically even before it comes inland. There's a right entrance region of an upper jet stream that begins to interact with this as it approaches the Big Bend area on most of the models. And that's when you really see the thing go nuts in terms of that low pressure bombing and those winds really wrapping around, which most of the models are now, I think, hitting on that very hot water, and they're tapping into it and strengthening the storm earlier. But that's another piece that we've got to worry about, because as that turn happens, obviously there's going to be a weakness or a steering current that's going to cause that to happen. And that right entrance region of the upper jet stream is also showing up now, impacting this as it begins to make landfall. So that's a bit of a concern for me, David. And if you remember, Michael did the same thing. That's when it reached peak intensity. It was beginning to get picked up by the trough, and it turned just a little to the right of Panama City.
That is super true. And so, just because you may have been through one or two in the past doesn't mean this one is going to be. It's kind of like that with tornadoes, too. I mean, a lot of people, Jim mentioned this, it's not going to happen to me. And we see that so many times. And if you want to take that chance, then you take that chance. But this is a broad area, folks. It's kind of tight. I say it's a broad area. It is a broad area. It's tighter than most. The wind field looks like it's going to be pretty close to the center if this is what actually takes place here. And it is, the higher winds are going to be, like we said, on the right-hand side. If you look at this track, Jim, how do you feel about Tampa with this track? With the one, and I don't know, what model is this, Drew?
This is still the 3 kilometer NAM.
3 kilometer NAM. If that were the track, and you had a south wind coming into Tampa Bay, would that be worrisome right there to you, or can you tell? We lose Jim?
Uh-oh, I think we did.
We may have lost Jim there.
We had a power strike, I know, at Jarvis's house, so might be.
One thing I want to add, see if we get Jim back. What he just said, Tyler in chat, very good point. He said he works at a gas station in the Tampa Bay area. None of the customers knew there's a hurricane coming, I guess, today. When he told them, they blew it off and said, "Oh, we never get storms. It will go north and miss us." So
which is a result of last year.
Correct. That's exactly what Jim was just talking about.
Yep.
I got a little insider information that I can kind of give you.
From God?
That, I think so. I think so.
Or Brandon Clement.
I get no. This is more of a federal insider that I can't really go into detail with here. But from what I'm being told, there won't be any changes because the new advisory is coming up soon. There won't be many changes to any of the watches, warnings, but there is an increase in storm surge heights coming, which is kind of an expectation. I think I wouldn't be shocked if you see them pull the trigger on a 14-foot forecast at this point, but I still think that's on the bottom side of the totem pole here. I think if this big black donut tries to work its way up into the Big Bend, I think you're
True.
talking 20 plus feet right there.
Easily. Yep.
Yeah, I've
So-
never. Again, I can't. Charlie was. I don't remember when Charlie crossed. Jim, can you hear me yet? 'Cause
I can hear you, but there I am.
we can see you. Do you remember? I don't remember the exact Charlie path there. Where did it cross over? I remember being on the air for it, but now I can't remember where it exactly went.
It came between Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda, so the river is looks like it was ground zero by the time it got to us. But it hit the outer islands first, near 150.
And I remember there being what's the river at Port Charlotte that's in the back of the bay?
But the Peace River.
Peace River. Peace River.
Yeah.
I remember the water going up to a bridge there at the Peace River, and people were really concerned about it. That was Charlie. There was a bridge somewhere up there on one of the highways. I should have to check my information, but you got the same orientation with like a Swanee River or what's the other river? The Alachua River. I might go down through there, I think. But you could have that getting up into these areas here too. Let's see. Oh, that was somebody else. Brandon's got a storm at his house, and so we might be losing some of our deal here because of that. He just sent me a little radar. He said we're not losing him.
Well, guys, we've been growing this. Everybody, let's make sure that we answer the questions. We got over 450 people watching right now.
For sure. Yep. We got several
everybody's
more. Go ahead, Brett. I'm
praising
sorry.
Jim here.
Yes.
They say that they really enjoyed Jim and the basically telling it how it is and giving some of these younger guys guidance because the live stream generation, especially of chasers that are out there now, I'm personally worried about some of these guys that are talking about coming down in this area and what the result may be. Unfortunately, it would be better for them if it hit a more populated area. It'd be better for us if it didn't, for the people there. We obviously want everybody to be safe. Unfortunately for me, the current forecast goes right over my sister's house there in Cross City. So I've got some concerns there. I may actually have to stop by and see about helping them evacuate at some point tomorrow on my way down. But yeah, it's everybody's definitely liking the knowledge that you're bringing to the table here, Jim. And I knew that was very important for our viewers to basically hear it from the horse's mouth because you've been through this so many times.
Yeah, I think I learned a hard way.
Did you?
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah, that's the only way I learned is the hard way. But I learned in Charlie, if you're going to take your car, put it in a safe place. I had Punta Gorda back then. They didn't have a parking garage, so there really wasn't a safe place. Don't leave your car in the Keys and go chase the storm further up because the water came up anyway. So yeah, I lost two. So I'm and I don't like having to find another one. But you mentioned that the Gulf water temperatures, SSTs,
Yeah.
I've never seen them so high. And usually your maximum heat content is in late August. And I can tell you, I used to go diving out of Destin, and we always loved the end of August because we didn't have to wear wetsuits at 80, 90 feet. So it's even warmer now. So what is going to happen when this thing gets in that warm water?
I don't know.
We don't really know. I mean, we have models, but models are sort of a guess, a good guess, but we really don't know. So I'm a little worried about what will happen.
I got something interesting for you, David. Destin, the guy I go fishing with out of Biloxi,
Yeah.
he just sent me an interesting tidbit. They were on the boat and they got out to the 1,000-foot contour for 1,000-foot depth of water, 87 to 88 degrees on Friday.
Yeah.
We got hot water at depth.
Yeah. What was that at surface? Because I know the surface is hot. I know the first 3 feet are hot. What bothers me is seeing some of these reports where at 50 feet it's still well into the 80s. And
Yeah.
at 100 feet, it's like, still like 85. I've never seen that. I've never, I've seen some stuff on TikTok here where guys are fishing down. There's, Jim, I don't know if they're talking about it down there, and it's not red tide related. It is actually because the water temperature is so high, there's oxygen depletion going on down. Fish kills are going on here and there. I don't know if you've seen or heard about that there, but I know across the Gulf Coast it's going on.
So what I've seen here this summer is the ospreys are gone. I don't see them
Really?
in shallow in here, and I don't know what's going on. Is it the water temp? I don't know, but we don't see a lot. I don't see a lot of fish inshore, like I normally would, like I have the past 2 years. Of course, the eagles go out in May, but the ospreys usually stick around, and
That could
I
be
just
because
don't
of the
see them
bait fish
anymore.
missing due to the temperatures.
I don't know.
You
Their
know,
little feet.
maybe.
Well, their little feet probably get hot too in the water. I would think, with the water temperature the way it is, and the poor health of all the fish in shallow water as well. I mean, because I know people who fish, who shallow water fish, who say they're not pulling up very healthy fish right now. So the
Right.
oddity of it all for me is, as I mentioned, is I have no idea what's going into the model at this point. I guess I should have called somebody who might know, like a Jack Bevan or somebody like that. But and where are they going? Because these new, like the, have you seen the HAFS parent model? I don't know a whole lot about it, but these are the two new tropical models that were coming out. You can see them on Tropical Tidbits. It has a 956 low now associated with it, and this is I thought that was from 0Z, it's still 18Z, but it's a 956. Huh?
The Gulfstream 4, the high altitude jet flies around 40 to 45,000 feet. That was up today, so it was sampling, and it's already gone back to base. But the data they collect, and they probably drop maybe 28, 29 drop zones north of it, and they got it pretty close a few times. But that data should be assimilated into the models. It should be. It should be out in the 11 p.m. run. So it's always better to have recon measure the steering currents because you get a better track.
What is that we're looking at, Drew?
That's still the 3 kilometer NAM. That's just looking at
yeah,
reflectivity instead of winds.
Yeah, we don't want to see that anymore because I'm afraid I'm going to be known for the 3 kilometer NAM. The GFS would be better. Or if you can, when you get a chance, if you pull up this HAFS model on my iPad, if it's still working or not, and you can see it's kind of the same thing. This is some of the new modeling coming in from NHC, some of their 2 new products, I think 2 new models that they have out, and this is their track now at a 953 and about the same positioning, which has been sort of the norm, that the positioning has been pretty much the same throughout just about every model. The further west you go, you end up with the NAM models showing up there, which we don't particularly look at the NAM models. I always send the barometric pressure to Brett and try to rile him up a little bit with the NAM models, but we don't pay a whole lot of attention there. But this is that HAFS model, and that's going to be a Wednesday. It's going to be Tuesday night, Wednesday, 06 Wednesday, so just offshore there. And that right there, so can you see this model here, Jim? And if you do, you see that's a west fetch coming in to Tampa Bay.
Yes.
Does that concern you, or do you need to see the mileage there? Or, I mean, because that goes right back to the back of the bay.
Yeah, it sure does. I don't know if you can hear me. I lost my
yeah,
photo.
we got you.
So I'm constantly every hour I'm measuring where I am. You can use this one program, Radar Omega. You can measure the CPA, closest point of approach to the track line, and I know on the back side of that it's going to really push a lot of water in, and so I'm trying to get a feel for where I want to go, or if I want to stay here, because then I have to worry about the cars and move them around. So it's just like Eon, where the track line went over us. I'm trying to figure out what to do, and it's nerve wracking.
35 miles an hour, isn't it? The barbs.
Oh,
those are 10s, aren't they? Or are they 5s?
Yeah, I think they're 10s. You're right. The long ones
Those
are
are
10s.
10s.
Yep.
Yeah, they're 35. That's 35 into, I mean, straight southwest to northeast coming into Tampa Bay there. That would concern me if the fetch was there for a while.
It's pretty compact there. That's again, an interesting feature here. Again, I hate to bring similarities to Michael, but it's very compact with the wind field on most of the models now. And that's something that, again, the more the compact the storm, the deeper I feel like that it could end up being. That's a sign for me of an intense hurricane coming inland.
This is the other model that is the HAFB. Again, I don't know a whole lot about these models. I know that the Hurricane Center is now putting these out, but that's even deeper at 943. And it looks like it's headed a little further north, probably up near Steinhatchee or beyond. 945 offshore, and again, that's a fetch, southwesterly fetch coming into Tampa Bay at that point. This makes it look pretty big and bad and ugly. This might be worse than the NAM, a 3K. This might be the new one that we kind of look at. And
it's pressure wise, it's a little bit up, but the wind field is still nasty. And we got to start thinking, if that shifts any more to the north and goes up in kind of really the armpit area there, I mean, Tallahassee's going to get popped by this thing too, potentially.
Yeah.
It may just go a little east of there, though. Areas between Tallahassee and Jacksonville on 10 are in a bad area. They're in the crosshairs for this.
For sure.
So, I mean, those, and if it were to go up into this wildlife refuge area down there, that's probably your closest population points when you get to I-10 and 75 there, before you really deal with population impacts of a large scale from the storm itself.
That is true. Real quick, 2 Real Geeks from Central Florida asking, lives in Orlando, works at Universal Orlando, asking what they can expect there in Central Florida. Of course, we've talked a lot about the impacts from surge right along the shore, coastline. We've talked a lot about wind impacts potentially, but we haven't talked a whole lot about the, of course, tourist mecca there, Disney World, the Universal, and all of the other areas there in Central Florida. So any of you guys want to take that?
That's not the big draw this week, though.
That's true.
Orlando, the big draw there is Florida State.
And LSU.
Plays LSU in Orlando on Sunday night. And so a lot of people are going to Disney and then headed over to the football game coming up this weekend. So that's one of the big deals there. If you'll take my computer one more time before we get behind on questions, I'll answer this one first of all. And this is from earlier in the day today. This is actually going to be from 4 p.m. the last time they put out this storm surge. Brett says they're going to up this, probably the red area is what they'll be upping there. Perhaps we'll look for that. But the storm surge now, as it looks like, it's going to be from the Ocklackney, about Carabel, to the north, over to the St. Mark's area there, coming in on the St. Mark's River, near the lighthouse, if you will. The rest of that is kind of like WMO. It's wildlife management areas there from the Osceola southward that goes down to, as far south as Steinhatchee, and then all the way down toward the, I think I say this right, but maybe I don't. Chassahowitzky. Is that right, Jim? Do you know what I'm talking about? Chassahowitzky. I've said that on television. Yeah, I've said that on television for many years, and nobody ever said idiot. So
either that or Chassahowitzky.
Chassahowitzky. Anyway, it's down there, and it's near the end also that's coming in the Osceola River up there to the north. That's Spanish Fort southward and eastward that goes all the way down to basically past Steinhatchee out there, the steam plant. I know the steam plant very well down there. I've been there many times before, with a 3 to 5 there into Tampa Bay. 5 being on the upper end. What does that relate to, Jim, as far as you can in your past? If it were a 5-foot storm surge in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that's trouble, because if you have a general slope, that's just going to come in a long ways. That's tough to work with.
Would they evacuate
here? Well, they should have storm surge maps. Emergency management should have something they can look at and determine how high above sea level they are.
Yeah.
And if they're in a color coded, you got to go. I mean, if the water's
Right.
going to come in your house, you don't want to be there.
And again, this is, let me see if I can find anything else here. The earliest reasonable arrival times. This was, again, I don't know why that says 4 o'clock. That should have been from 7 o'clock. But that, and there's a flash flooding potential. Again, we looked at the QPF earlier where the rain was supposed to fall. This yellow area here says it's a slight because the system is moving somewhat at a steady pace to the northeast by this time. And in fact, it speeds up after making landfall. So the threat for appreciable rains is, anywhere in the, we saw 7 to 10, but I don't really know that I believe that. It's going to be somewhere maybe up to 7 from Tallahassee, from the Big Bend, actually, and the Apalachicola River to the east, we'll say, and covering South Georgia, too, which it's been terribly hot and dry all across the Deep South. It'd be nice to have some of that rainfall. We often look for tropical systems like this to help us out with rainfall. We just don't want to get it all at the exact same time, but this might be helpful should this be the case, should this happen overall here. B?
Yeah, I agree, David. I think for tonight, I'm just now taking a peek at the latest infrared satellite. Boy, this thing is rapidly organizing. I fear to say, but I believe it may be possible by the time that Recon makes it to the system tonight, we might end up having a hurricane. It's really wrapping right over top of this thing now. So, we're going to head on down. We're in the general direction of Tallahassee. We are about an hour and 50 minutes from Tallahassee. So that's our plan for the rest of the evening. We're going to finish our drive up, get a little bit of rest tonight. And then we've actually got some storm surge camera packs that we will be deploying, live streaming packs that we will be deploying because, after I almost killed myself and Michael, we decided we'd put remote cameras out instead of making bread a human probe. So
Jim smiled.
Jim knows
braver than I am.
stories. You might find me and Jim strapped to a buoy somewhere in the next couple of days, like he said. We won't know until we try it. That's how we learn. But yeah, we're going to put some remote camera packs out there in some of those areas where we shouldn't see people, hopefully. And we're going to continue our track to the south. We're going to do a little scouting tomorrow because if we start to see this intensify pretty rapidly, we might see a pretty mass exodus of evacuations at some point starting tomorrow. And honestly, tomorrow we're starting to get into crunch time if this makes landfall Tuesday night, Wednesday morning.
For sure. Real quick, just a couple more questions from our chat. You guys, again, thank y'all so much for chiming in tonight. You've been great. Racing Driver 8 asking, what's the possible strength this hurricane may be coming from the Gulf? I'll take that real quick, guys. We've talked about the low end. We've talked about the high end. So Racing Driver, prepare for at least a Cat 2 because that's the official National Hurricane Center forecast as of this evening. Will that change? Probably. Could it be a 3 or 4 or stronger? I think anything's on the table at this point. Would you guys agree or disagree?
Yeah, certainly. I think it could be a Cat 3. That's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Exactly.
I think honestly, again, being a little conservative right now with the forecast until we see how things develop overnight. But personally, I expect a major hurricane at some point, whether it makes landfall as one or not. That's to be determined, but I do expect that we see a major hurricane out of the system, possibly a higher end hurricane. It's just, this is an area where the Gulf is known to do Gulf things, as we say, with very, very high and unprecedented water temperatures.
Sure,
If this thing gets its act together before it comes into the Gulf, if it does a good eye wall structure and it's got all that sorted out, because that's a time consuming process while it's percolating. It looks like it's doing that. And if it comes into the Gulf with that circle around the eye intact, then I think it's going to be big trouble.
Bingo. Great information. And real quick, trying to get all y'all's questions. Y'all are just being
Well,
awesome
let's
with
get to the
questions
Orlando
tonight.
thing
Yes.
because they were very nice about that. And if you just truly look at the model, if we go to the model here, and I'll show you what the GFS had to say a little bit earlier in the day today. And this is from 18Z, which is, it still has all the data there, everything that we'll be looking at should the storm come and do what it was expected to do. Now, 18Z is going to take us up to, let's see. There's your storm at 18Z. Some of the feeder bands of what we were thinking could get over into the Orlando area there right about this time, but it also could be subsidence, which is just on the outside, and they would be sinking there. You could end up with some of the nicest weather that you've seen in a while. There actually, if you're out at the outer edge, it looks like the rain doesn't come in. And by the way, the question was, is it going to be bad here? Is it going to be severe? No. This thing would have to take an unbelievable change and go hard right for that to be the case. You're going to be in the outer side of this the whole way, at least several hundred miles away from the center. Its closest point to you would be right there Tuesday night, it looks like, and then passing on by you. And it's a tight little bundle of precipitation if you sort of believe what's coming with the modeling here. This is the GFS model that we're looking at. Then ends up, and I can answer the second question here, ends up going back offshore again or parallel to the shore if you believe in the GFS. And that means a lot of rainfall through the interior, it looks like at this point. Not so much even, into Tennessee or anything, but for South Georgia, interior South Carolina, and into the eastern side of North Carolina before going back out offshore. Now, this could be a whole different thing that we're dealing with here because that's still a 992 low pressure that's sitting right about, in between North Carolina and South Carolina. That's and that would be interesting because that's a pretty hard fetch coming on shore there. There's at least beach erosion, if not, tornadoes. We haven't really looked this far, B.
That part is also what I would err on the side of caution for Orlando. Many cases we don't see the feeder band features unless we look at really high resolution guidance. So you're going to be on the right side of the storm there. Any of those feeder bands, because there is a pretty good shear axis there, and there's also a good bit of instability. If you can get any cells within those feeder bands, you can definitely deal with a couple of tornadoes as this thing passes by. You can kind of see there's some bands there that are showing up on that NAM. Right.
This is the NAM here, 12K.
That would probably be the biggest threat, though, is maybe some localized flash flooding if you get underneath the heavier band on the more interior, and then the potential see those cells. Those could spawn a quick tornado or two as we go through time. So that's something that we'll have to basically keep an eye on as the system continues to evolve. Yep.
Yeah, it was right there toward the end, that feeder band that was pretty far down to the south there. You can see coming across Orlando, sometime at that point. It's amazing, too, that the 12K has a much higher barometric pressure there, 988, than the 3K. But this is what Brad's talking about. Should that feeder band continue to move on to the east, and it will because the storm is expected to go northeast, the feeder band will go eastward as well across southern portions of Florida. In the Orlando area, that's Apalachicola, what's the water there? I've fished there many times before. Lake Okeechobee.
Lake Okeechobee, yes.
Yeah, the circle is Lake Okeechobee. Orlando's north of there, up around 1,004 to 1,006 millibars there. That's going to be a southwest wind that'll be blowing pretty hard. And, again, this is a feeder band coming out of the south side of this, and that's when you would occur any chance for severe weather like a tornado, a quick tornado or two. And that could possibly happen. And then for you folks further to the north, I think we'll be talking about this for several more days into Thursday, probably Friday, before it moves offshore again. And it would still, at 980, what was it? On the GFS, it was still 988 or 990. It'd still be a tropical storm.
Guys, I think, again, this has the potential, because as you see, it picks up speed there as it gets close to the shore. That's going to be a caveat to this system. Franklin, you see Franklin out there that has pulled even further to the west of Bermuda, man. They kind of, if you see that there, the isobars are trying to kind of co-locating. It's building a ridge there through the Bahamas to the east in between both of the systems, and that thing's going to shoot the gap and go up through the Carolinas most likely, and then probably offshore due to those steering currents. But I've got to say, I saw a question or a response here. Lieutenant Dan's Ice Cream here in the YouTube chat says he sent a $5 donation. He says calling it a Cat 3 Plus. I'm going to say that's possible. That's definitely possible.
Is that our Lieutenant Dan?
I think so.
Dang.
Well, at least Bubba's got his shrimp boat out of the water for
then
this.
I'm not going to count on the money. If that's the Lieutenant Dan I know, I'm not counting on that money. What is this? This is the H Werf.
Yep.
Again from 18Z. We just don't have any of the new models yet. And I thought, let's see, that'd be 942 coming right up the chute there, just to the east of Leon County, Florida, Gadsden County, and just to the east of the St. Marks River. And that would mean everything would be to the right.
Yep, that would be a bad day. Mark Skelton asking, I think we just touched on it, Mark. If we didn't answer your question, let me know. So will it affect Tampa Bay? I know we've been talking a lot about Tampa and the Bay Area there. So yes, you will have impacts one way or another in Tampa. Will you have the center of a possible major hurricane come over Tampa? Too early to tell. But right now, the official track keeps it just north of Tampa Bay. But like we saw last year with Ian, this same area was in the bullseye a couple days out with Ian, and it ended up south of Tampa. Does this thing go that far south? I don't know, guys. What do you think? Do you think this thing could end up south of Tampa like Ian, or do you think we keep it somewhere Tampa north?
I'm pretty confident Tampa north.
Yeah, me too.
Appalachia to Tampa is my thinking.
Yep, I agree. And then Chris said, can a stronger storm, if it gets much stronger, could it possibly take a more northern track in the cone? You guys want to touch on that?
Brett, go ahead.
Anything's possible. I mean, you see the modeling as it is. That's a pretty strong storm. We're getting into the 940 type low situation here, and it's taking it pretty far to the north. So the NHC track for now looks pretty good. It's really going to depend, again, like Jim said, once we start to see that CDO begin to expand over the center, and then we start to see some sinking air in the center, and we get an eye wall to develop, when we can get a better handle on the intensification, I think we're going to have a better handle on the track as well.
Yeah, when it starts moving in earnest, then I think the models will come together and we'll have a better idea. But if it's drifting and slow, then I don't look at the models as that's where it's going to go. But once it starts moving, they're more confident. The one thing I would add is the Euro, the last Euro run, it crosses Florida, but it comes very close to Jax, and being on the right side, they may get some really rough weather at night about sunset on. So I think folks in Jacksonville need to pay attention and watch the track as it comes across Florida.
Yeah, the NHC has it still there, as a tropical storm, 1 p.m. on Wednesday, just north of Duval County. So it's, and anything to the right, again, we get concerned about tornadoes. So,
and guys, I know we haven't talked about it, and I haven't seen anything in chat, but that puts Savannah, Georgia, in the crosshairs for possible directly impacted from whatever it is at that point, either a weak hurricane or strong tropical storm. So, anywhere in southeast Georgia, all the way through the coastal Carolinas that Dave did talk about, prepare now for a possible direct impact from whatever this thing ends up being.
I think, David, we've kind of got a consensus here. We did this tonight. We started up at 8:00. I think tomorrow night is probably going to be kind of our code red time ahead of the storm, a good 30, 36 hours ahead. I think we need to do another stream here tomorrow night for you guys and come back with the latest details. Jim, if you're available, you're more than welcome to attend. I'll be obviously down on the coast somewhere with you. So we'll be on location tomorrow night versus in the truck.
Jim, we've made $10.99 with our chat revenue tonight, so we'll pass that along to you if you'll join us again.
Okay. I'll probably be pushing north sometime tomorrow, and And if the internet speed is good, I'll join you.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd appreciate it. 'Cause we got a lot of feedback about you tonight, all positive feedback too. There wasn't one soul who got on and said Jim owes me money. So that's always
or child
always
support or anything like that.
It's always a great sight. So appreciate you being with us. And I can't look how many people say I owe money that's on there. 2 of them are ex-wives.
Well, you know, that's a story. Literally, I got pulled over in Arkansas by a 75-year-old sheriff chasing tornadoes one time, and he told my guy that was driving, which was Eric Parker, Mr. Electric Fescue.
Electric
Eric,
Fescue.
You love so much. He looked at Eric and said, "Son, did you see my stop sign back there?" And there was no stop sign back there. He kind of wanted to look at the truck, I believe, and he leaned his head in the truck and he said, "Any of you boys owe child support or anything that I need to know about?" And this was on a live stream and everything. And we're like, "No, sir." And he said, "Well," he said, "y'all just make sure you get all this fancy equipment out of my county. I don't need no tornadoes today."
That's hilarious. Well, all right. I guess we'll wrap it up here. Listen, we might come back and do like a short or something here in just a little bit when all the new stuff comes out, because we'd love to help you get updated, because it is all the new stuff is about to come out. The GFS won't come out for a little while longer, but some of the new models will be again. The National Hurricane Center, they'll update again coming up. Is it 10 o'clock Central Time?
Actually, I think that it's about to happen in the next 3 minutes if we want.
Well, let's don't go away then.
The new update's coming out.
Yeah, let's hold on here till we see that, because I don't want to drive anybody anywhere else. And I think I just did, like 100 people left.
They'll be back.
I don't have it here.
It's not in just yet. I'm looking.
We're 13 minutes away.
Zoom Earth will have the track plotted before the Hurricane Center has their graphics up. They use the advisory forecast points.
Drew's familiar with that.
I'm going there right now. Let's see here. Okay.
I don't think so. 21.
Oh, that's a neat graphic. I haven't used this one in a minute. They've really updated this.
Well, now you tell me.
Yeah, this is new. Some of this.
I don't think it's out yet, but it's probably any minute.
It will be any minute.
Yeah, but usually it's 10 minutes prior that they release their graphics, because the 10 o'clock shows are coming up and they want all the media to be able to use those new graphics in their shows.
Yeah, and it used to be like 10:15. It used to be right after I get started with the show. It was horrible back then, especially if you were on Eastern time. It was very difficult. But
hey, huge shout out, Storm Chaser Logan. I hope I'm going to butcher your last name, Logan. Esrich, I believe it is. $5 super chat says, great work, fellow LSM crew. Good luck, Brett. Thank you for that, Storm Chaser Logan. We appreciate you.
Excellent.
That is awesome. We appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. I was so glad when I was able to reach out and Jim was able to jump on here with us again. Having a guy who's been through it and around the block with these things is really good to hear from, because, again, as we mentioned many times, a lot of new people out here that are wanting to get into storms. They've done tornadoes and they've done snow, and this is just a whole different animal. And hopefully some of those guys are listening and understand that if we're not out on Cedar Key, or if we're not out in Steinhatchee on the river, there's probably a good reason that we're not out there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And Jim, prior to having you on, we had Chris Smith, who's a meteorologist at WJHG in Panama City, who I think you're familiar with. Chris was on with us for the first 45 minutes we were on here tonight, and I really appreciate Chris. He was not far away from his airtime there, so he came on with us to help us out a little bit, and we always appreciate those who take time out of their busy schedule to help us out like that. So Mark Sublett is with us here at the moment. Mark is a electronic genius who has helped me working in my studio here, so shout out to Mark. If the raccoon has run over to your porch and it's off mine now, I would appreciate that. We've got a raccoon that tries to. That's just between us. Yeah, Storm Chaser Logan is Estrich. I think that's right.
I think that's
Logan
right.
Estrich.
Yeah, Laura Alice is with us. Laura, it's great to see you tonight. Layla is with us as well. And Live Honestly, Dean Barry is one of our moderators. Thank you, Dean, for helping us out tonight. Dean did part of that package that you saw a little while ago as well. We're not begging for money here, by the way, guys. I appreciate it. But
Iwall Addict. I love your username, Iwall. Thank you. Awesome job, too. Thank y'all for the super chat, Iwall Addict. Y'all love that.
All right, guys.
Just got it. Yep. You want to read that, Brett?
Yep, that's what I was just about to give you a tidbit here. So Franklin is strengthening and is up to 105 miles per hour, which Franklin is not our biggest concern at the moment.
Yep.
I think we're about to see the new advisory for.
I'm just sitting here hitting the button.
Let's see. Have you got the new one, or did you get Franklin?
No, I thought that was the new one. It was Franklin. So.
Yeah, Franklin's up to 105. Pressure's down to what are we down to on Franklin? 962 northwest at 8. That storm, we were looking for the potential to hit Bermuda, but man, that thing went way west. You know, the new track actually has the recurve possibly coming closer to Bermuda now than the direct strike earlier.
A little bit. It's on the screen there.
A little closer.
Oh, that's old. That's still not it.
Well, there's a new one. 11 o'clock's out. I just saw it.
You know, it's unusual to see a Cat 3 north of Bermuda, but as these water temps, and like I said, this is maximum heat content in late August. That doesn't surprise me, and it's very warm water. They have the same problem the Gulf of Mexico has. It's very warm water, and it's further north than it normally is. So they have it 115 miles an hour north of Bermuda, well north of Bermuda, by quite a bit. Let's look 145 miles north of Bermuda. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. NHC's having a few problems here because they say they just updated, but none of their data is.
Yeah, I was just looking to see if we had an NHC channel here. I'm in the National Weather Service chat here. I don't see an NHC chat, so I can't look there for any information. Well, all right. Got some puppies over here, a little irritated apparently. I think he wants to bite Heath's head off. He's looking at him and sees a snack in the driver's seat.
We got to give Heath a shout out, by the way. Heath is driving for Brett. Heath won't talk because he's concentrated. He's focused. Heath is super focused. There he is right there.
There's Heath. All right.
Look at him there. He's concentrating on where they're parked, and he's making sure that nobody sneaks into the back of the truck again.
I can report officially there's zero wind at this point.
Yes, we have no wind. We have lots of fuel at this location. Yes. We just filled up. I think we've got 35-ish gallons of fuel with us. That's another thing is evacuations begin. All of you people coming down into the area to cover the storm, you better bring some fuel with you because we've been there, done that. Fuel will begin to run sparse, especially if we see a lot of evacuations take place.
Which is a quick story. I'll tell this quick, I promise. Brett and I, when we were covering, it was the 3-letter storm, and I never know if it's Ida or, and it's not Ida. It's Ian, wasn't it?
Ida.
Ida? Was it Ida?
Yep, Ian was this last year, Florida. Ida was Louisiana.
So we were covering this storm, and I was doing a live shot. We both were doing live shots, actually, and we were in a little town, a small little town. Power lines were down everywhere, and Brett had 3 cans of gas, 15 gallons of gas, sitting on the back of his vehicle that were like a big red light. I mean, I saw people looking at it like they used to look at one of my ex-wives when I wasn't around. But this was a deal where people would stop. And this one dude stopped while we were live on the air and walked over toward us. And I was a little afraid. No, I was a lot afraid. I was a lot afraid because he was in a hurry. And I thought he was going to take our gas from us. And, you know, you never know what some people might do in those kind of situations. They had no power, and Brett, do you remember the 3 or 4 young girls that were in the U-Haul that came underneath the power line and hit one of the red lights? Had sunk down far enough. It was working, but it sunk down pretty far, and they hit it with a U-Haul, and were about to take it away, and somehow it just flipped over the top of their truck and flipped off.
Yep.
But that's what I say. When America as you know it ceases to exist in the same fashion as it was when you have the aftermath of a hurricane like that. And after Katrina, I went down to the Superdome. I reported from the Superdome for several days there, and I brought 2 women back with me who had lost their homes, who stayed with me for about a year. Their stories from what happened at the Superdome were incredible, but nonetheless, I saw some things there that happen in desperation, and you just don't want to get involved with that. You want to make sure, especially in this sort of situation, because there's only one road in and out in many cases. On the east side of the Suwannee River and on the north side of the Suwannee River, there's one road that's really in and out of Cedar Key, I guess, Brett. So
It looks like they bumped the winds up to 95 knots.
The new updates out.
Yeah, I'm looking at the forecast track.
Sustained?
95 knots sustained. So
Sustained?
95 plus about
that'll be
95
that's
knots
not
sustained.
right now, but that's in the forecast.
that'd be
in the
that'd be
forecast.
on the 30th at 26.8 and 84.3.
So we're 5 knots off a major.
Yep. And real quick, while we're getting that information, guys, I want to give a huge shout out. TS, thank you for that super chat. And then Logan again. Logan coming in with another super chat. You guys are awesome. We appreciate it.
I've got information now. This is out fresh from the NHC. IDALIA strengthening quickly. Hurricane warning issued for the Cuban province of Pinar del Rio. 992, move it is stationary, max sustained up to 60. So that's a 10-mile-an-hour jump.
Yeah.
Yep.
It went up 10 and the pressure dropped another 3 millibars. That's a bad sign.
I've got
Very
a feeling that we're going to have a hurricane when we get a recon plane in there after midnight.
Right.
I agree.
About 1:30, the Air Force will take off out of Biloxi and head south. It won't take them that long to get down there.
If you want to pull that graphic up on the iPad, David, it's live on the Hurricane Center website now.
Yep. That discussion is interesting too. They're stating the center is been moving erratically and is nearly stationary, like Brett said. A motion towards the north, northeast, and north is expected to begin on Monday, bringing the center of the storm over extreme southeastern Gulf of Mexico by Monday night. Will continue northward or northeastward.
Hold on a second. Let me get a graphic to go with what you're
Sure.
saying, because it's kind of hard to comprehend what you're saying without an actual graphic. Where was the graphic, Brett?
It's on the Hurricane Center website. The graphic is live now for the track. I just took a look at that.
They are saying officially now, and is expected to become a major hurricane when it reaches the Gulf Coast of likely near. Here's a specific wording. It is likely to be near or at major hurricane intensity when it reaches the Gulf Coast of Florida. So that's about as close to saying it's going to be a major without coming right out and saying it.
Here's a very interesting tidbit from the actual discussion that I'm noticing. They're saying IDALIA has already strengthened more than anticipated, and the environment looks ripe for additional intensification, possibly rapid. The NHC intensity has been increased and lies at the upper bound of guidance. New prediction shows a 95-knot hurricane in the eastern Gulf at 48 hours, but it should be stressed that additional strengthening to major hurricane is becoming increasingly likely before IDALIA reaches the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Key messages there.
That's trouble. There's a buoy to the southeast, about 30 miles from the center. They have sustained winds at 52, and that's 30 miles out from the center with a gust of 60.
Oh, wow.
I forgot to look at the buoy.
No,
data
there's
tonight.
not. Yep.
Looks like, let's see. Let's see.
Dave, that should be the map just refreshed for me. So you should have that brand new NHC track if you want to pull that.
This is
Here it
the
is.
this is the buoy that he's talking about too. This is 42056, which again has a water temperature at 80 or 85. What's been unbelievable to me, Jim, is water temperatures are much more than air temperatures.
Yeah, that's really unusual.
Yeah, air temperatures are 81.3, but the water temperature is 86. And there's your gust, 40 knots. We got a 40 knot gust at 20 meters and a 37 knots, so 42 miles an hour. Sustained wind there at 10 meters from the buoy. And like you said, this is right on the spot there from just a few moments ago. And if you look at the IDALIA, oh, no, blow that a couple of times. Wind speed, there was a ship there earlier that had a 40 knot wind as well that I was looking at, one of the ships that was offshore. So it is certainly climbing here. That's going to be the case going into the next several hours. That'll be climbing upward. Let me see if I can get the map one more time on NHC. It says updated at 10:57, but is the map going to be updated?
It doesn't look like the landfall where the skinny black line goes over the coast. It doesn't look like it has changed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the Hurricane Center, the interactive map, and I see Horseshoe Beach, and it's just to the right of Horseshoe Beach, and that's what it was before. So if I'm looking at this right, it hasn't. If they've updated that one, they should have updated it.
When were the spaghetti plots updated too? I'd like to know that.
Just got something just
7
flashed
p.m.
on my screen on
Yes.
some of the spaghetti plots. So I think we're starting to get a few of them, not all, but nothing has changed on those either. We still got that clustering pretty much in the same general area. Looks like the NHC, if anything, is maybe on the southern side of where we've got most of the spaghetti plots coming in.
Yeah, that's, I think, David, before we started the show, I told you when we were just talking and mingling that if this thing was a hurricane before it made it to the latitude of Key West, that I would be extremely concerned. And do you see that now? They've got it forecast to be a hurricane before it hits the western tip of Cuba now.
Yep.
That's a problem.
Yeah, right there. Those are hurricane warnings for western Cuba.
That's a big issue. And if it's going into rapid intensification, it's a very small, compact system. It won't take long for this thing to just go gangbusters.
See if the surge has updated here. No.
I just looked and I didn't see the.
That's the new surge, but it's the same information. Well, they went 4 to 7 now for Tampa Bay, wasn't it? 3 to 5.
It was
3 to 5.
So it's 4 to 7 now for Tampa Bay, Jim. Is there?
Yeah, it does surprise me because they have 110 miles an hour when it goes by us, so that is gonna change things for me.
Yeah, that's
Very
concerning.
So the height levels went up on the far eastern side of everything, 6 to 9 from.
Okay, so I have
Rainfall.
I have it up on Zoom Earth, and it looks like the line goes right over Cedar Key, and oh boy, it's coming close to me. So if I'm here, I'm looking at 44 miles, center point at. Oh, that's close.
Jim, do you have?
That's gonna push some water up Tampa Bay. I don't know how much, but it's gonna push some water up, and it's gonna come up here too.
Do you have a lot of people in like where you live? You got neighbors who are trying to text you right now to find out what to do?
The neighbors, no, they some will leave, but like I said, some just they always seem to go by us, and
Yeah,
maybe, but one of these days they won't. They'll hit. So
I'm worried a stronger storm would be more apt to try to pull toward the right, toward the coastline. And it scares me as to how soon it might even do that. So again, once this clears Cuba, its intensity is going to be vital And like you said, NHC has moved that line a little bit to the right, a little bit further to the south, which will obviously change landfall time too, based on its distance of travel at that point. But you can see that new hurricane center outlook there. That center is right underneath some of that deepest convection. So this is definitely a sign of rapid intensification that's likely ongoing. You can even see in the infrared cloud pattern there, you've got the banding there in the upper level venting feature. You can kind of see the northern quadrant might have a little bit of shear, but everything looks to be venting pretty dang good right now.
Brett, now our arrival time is a little bit further on into the day. If you look at this, estimated times, I think this is going to be times for tropical storm force winds, but is there one for hurricane winds? I think there is. Arrival time, tropical storm.
I think there is somewhere there, Dave.
Yeah, I thought so too, but I don't see it right here.
When I look at this track, it's 110, and it's still south of Tampa Bay. The closest point approach to Tampa Bay is 60 miles. So that's not good.
No.
That's going to push some water up Tampa Bay.
That's going to push some water up.
And it's very low lying around Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that Tampa to Tarpon area there up there, where close to where you live, Jim, I would obviously be a lot more concerned at this point with this outlook, and not only the outlook, but what's actually occurring already. Again, I think by the time recon gets in there, as long as we continue the same presentation, we likely have a hurricane by the time they get there in about 3 hours. So, again, all the people that are viewing, I know there's people from Florida that are watching us and listening to us talk about all these models and whatnot tonight. The key message that we're trying to send to you, if you're in the area of this cone, not just the center line of the path, but this cone, now is the time you need to be making those preparations. You don't need to wait, until tomorrow night to do so. When you get up first thing in the morning, if you need essentials, if you need fuel, if you're on a coastal area, if you're in a flood zone, in a storm surge zone with a current surge forecast, you need to be planning your potential evacuation and get those things rushed to completion, because again, you got about 36 hours once we get to the time tomorrow, and then we'll probably start seeing some of those outer bands coming on shore as we go into later Tuesday. So that's the key message. The time to act and prepare really is right now.
So didn't the Euro model, the last one, shift it left? Last time I checked, it shifted left, but the Hurricane Center moved this right.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there's some other things going on here that they saw to move it to the right.
Yeah, the center's a little bit to the right of where the initialization was of the Euro and the GFS, really everything, because it's kind of meandered down there most of the day today. So it initialized a little too far to the west. Maybe that plays in, but I've got a feeling we're still going to see more changes in this track over the next, maybe even by the time we wake up tomorrow. Right now, with their latest thinking though, and then the intensification change, that Tampa area, St. Pete, Clearwater area, I would definitely be raising some concerns if I lived in that area now.
Oh yeah,
storm surge watch is in effect. I guess you may have mentioned that, Jim. It says storm surge watch is in effect now. That goes pretty far down to the south. Actually, I think it's going to include even Cape Coral. Well, it's going to go all the way down to Naples. Actually, a storm surge watch is on this.
We had that we had that at 5.
At 5,
but they're probably
that far south,
right?
Was it?
Yeah, we were in it, and further south than us, but with this track change, it looks like about 16 miles to the right. If you're looking at the landfall, which was just right of Horseshoe. So they moved about 16 miles if you're splitting hairs, but that's it makes a big difference, because a little bit of change can greatly affect the coastline. We learned that during Ian and Charlie. So a little bit makes a big difference when you're talking about a north-south coastline.
For you, Jim, the biggest difference this time is Ian was, it came in south of you, but this one, even if it comes into your north, onshore flow as it comes inland and driving the water into Tampa Bay. You're not going to see that water leave Tampa Bay this time. You're going to see water inundate the bay. So quite concerning, and that this is also something that we're going to look at first thing in the morning and see if the guidance continues to shift. If there's any type of a shift to the right, Tampa may actually be, unfortunately, a ground zero type situation.
And I'll tell you what we're going to do, by the way, tomorrow, at least, myself and Drew will probably be on at noontime Central Time. We'll just go ahead and say right now we'll do an update at noontime Central Time. Brett, if you can join us, that's great. Brett's got to be moving. But let me go ahead and say right now to you that we'll be on tomorrow at noontime to sort of get a handle on what's happening from the morning. And then we'll probably even establish something a little bit later on in the day. So we will be doing that, and want to make sure that for those of you who are out there, I know we've had almost 500 concurrent views for a while during the night tonight, and we really appreciate that. And part of that's because of you, Jim.
Absolutely.
We do appreciate you being here for that. But Brett has some new technology he's going to be using during the day tomorrow, and so we're going to bring you that and from his vehicle. In fact, Brett and Jim will be there through the entirety. Jim, is there a channel you want to plug?
Oh, my website is it's a dinosaur. I guess just follow me on Twitter. There's a link to my YouTube. I have a few videos that are pretty good.
I'm gonna hook Jim up with a link tree so he can give a link tree link, and it'll give him all of his links so that everybody can follow all those, because this guy's got some of the best hurricane footage you're ever going to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brett, if this keeps moving to the right, come on down here. We'll see. We got hurricane glass right on the water, and we're the second floor, so you'll be all right.
Jim,
as long as you got some pilings, I got some ratchet straps. If you'll strap me in, I'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Can I just say this, Jim? I see worry on your face.
Yeah, it's personal when they start coming at you. It's one thing to jump on a plane and go chase a typhoon, but Judy. I worry about Judy and the dog, and just like everybody else, you worry about what's going to happen, and I want to be here to just make sure everybody's okay.
Understand that totally.
Do you have, again, even if you were to be there for this type of an event, and it were to be a direct hit in that area, I'm sure you guys even have some sort of an evacuation plan for your pup and for Judy, especially if we're talking a higher end landfall there.
Well, I would stash the cars in Newport Richey. There's a parking garage there. But we'd be okay. The building is very, very solid. The bottom would blow out, the elevator and electronics, and I'm sure we couldn't live here after what I saw with Ian down in Fort Myers. There'd be no water, no electricity, but we would be safe here, and because we got the hurricane glass all the way around, and we have a balcony facing the water. And with the wind profile, we'd have an opportunity to shoot the approach and then the backside, depending on where the winds are. So I would stay here because we don't have any other place to go. You go to a motel, they're going to be packed. And so that's a problem in itself. So, and we have a dog, and they wouldn't probably allow that. So there's a lot of problems in Florida because everybody's pushing north and all the motels are booked. So you really have to go a long ways, and I don't like to do lines, and it's just a wasted time for me.
I understand.
Well, I tell you what, Jim, I will absolutely come and ride it out with you if it takes place down there. We'll make sure that we'll hold down the fort for sure. I'll probably see you at some point tomorrow if this trend keeps up, regardless, and just
check in.
Yeah, if we need to come help you do some shutters or anything like that. I don't know what you guys have on your building, but
no shutters, just hurricane glass. We got rid of shutters.
There you go. Okay.
Too much of a worry, and half of them didn't work anyway.
That's right. Well,
I want to show one more quick thing if we can. If if we can show my iPad one more time here, because what he is talking about, what Jim's talking about, is this area here coming into, which is a pretty wide gap here, coming into the bay. Anna Maria, Bradenton Beach there, but coming into Tampa Bay like this, if the wind comes in from the southwest, if it's a southwesterly fetch, we would mean the storm was probably by you. It's going to be a south wind to begin with when the storm gets parallel to you, but once it goes by you, that's a little bit more of a southwesterly wind that'll be coming into the bay. And then it has two choices. It can go to the right side or it can go to the left side. The old Tampa Bay there at 275, Interstate 275, which goes over the bay there into the back of the bay, and then it could run up the river here. I suppose, Jim, I don't know a whole lot about, I can't remember in my lifetime a similar situation, but once it gets to the back of the bay there, it's got to go on land somewhere. Now, is there somewhere there that even at a king tide and maybe a storm situation where you've seen the water come over this part of the back of the bay?
Oh, what you're showing right there, all that is low lying,
Yeah.
and it goes way inland. So it's just going to be.
Those are a bunch of houses, and I mean, everybody's built on the water back in there, it looks like at this point. No such thing as a levee system here. This is what you see is what you get. I guess you could run all the way up to Lake Tarpon here if it had to, but that would be worst case scenario. So this is the back of Tampa Bay, and then on this right side, is this a flood prone area here, Hillsborough Bay?
Yes, all up and down there. When we drive over to go to the local Costco, you can see it's really low and the water's down low, and all that's going to flood. It's just a huge area that's going to flood.
I mean, even in what, this is the stadium there, isn't it? What is that? That's the is that the football stadium in Tampa, or is it Tampa
Yeah,
Bay?
I can't see it that well.
I'm sorry.
but-
The Florida Aquarium, I mean, up in that area there that's just south of the interstate, south of 275, but DeSoto Park in that region there too. That all looks low-lying, and if this thing does what it looks like it's going to do right now, there's almost assuredly an effect there. And if it's 4 to 7, I know you can't tell, but could it make it to 275?
What I do is I go to a site, Elevation Finder, and I zoom in, and then I click the mouse, and it'll tell me
need to
what
do
the
that.
elevation
Yeah.
is there.
We need to do
And that's
that.
a good way. And actually, I should have the storm surge, the slush map for this area. But the Hurricane Center will put that on their website and probably do it tomorrow morning if they haven't done it already. And you can zoom in and you can see how much water they expect to come up. And they're really good at that. They're very accurate. But you're right. When the storm goes by, it's going to push all that water in,
Yeah.
because like Ian, the real storm surge came in after the eye, because that's when the winds are onshore, and that's the big push of water. So just because the wind shifted or you get the eye doesn't mean you're home free yet.
No, they don't look good at all. Okay, Brad, have you got anything else you want to add?
No, guys, I think we hit a bunch of key points. I think everybody tonight needs to get a good night's rest. Myself, Jim included, you, David. We're gonna have a long few days ahead of us, it looks like, here in the field, back in the studio. And then for those people that are watching at home, again, get you some good rest tonight, because tomorrow's kind of go time. You got to start making those preparations. If you got to do some boarding of homes, again, getting out of evacuation zones, fuel, any supplies that are needed. Tomorrow is kind of go time. That's the reason the state of emergency has been in effect in Florida for 2 days now. I don't know that that's been really heightened or taken to the level that it should have been, because now we're now on the brink of something much more major, I think, than just a low end landfalling hurricane.
Yeah. Jim, thank you so much for joining us again. Once again, maybe we'll see you again tomorrow night. If not, I know Brett will be keeping up with you. But thank you so much. Appreciate talking to you and getting to meet you face to face now at this time. The Wiesbaden thing is amazing to me, because I was just talking to somebody from there earlier in the day today who lives in Colorado Springs. But anyway, Brett, we'll be talking to you shortly. Drew had to go to the potty. And Brandon Jarvis is with us. He's been running everything. Dean is also on chat tonight. Thank you, Dean, for helping us out there as well. And for the rest of you, we appreciate you being with us. We'll be back again, as I said, noon Central Time tomorrow. We're going to come back noon Central Time tomorrow. We'll be with you and give you an update on what's going on. and maybe have some more guests at that point. For now, we're going to wrap it up, and thank you all very much for being with us and all the donations, by the way. Jim, good to see you.